So while everybody is gathering, I'm going to make a few comments on the last session because I think there is some very prescient comments that are really relevant to today. There was a lot of discussions around patients, and I think that's really indicative of the cultural transformation that is occurring within this community. Last week, some of you had the opportunity to participate, but at the Medtech conference in particular, there was actually a patient pavilion set up, and that was the first time that there was actually anything of that concept, and it was a very popular venue. And I think it's just the beginning of an explosion of activities around and a culture around the patient and really focusing on the patient in what we do in innovation. So very pleased with that. And I would say there was a lot of comments around the leadership coming from Jeff Shuren at FDA. And in particular, the area of patient connectivity with his staff and actually having goals. Not only talking about it, but having goals about everybody within the center having an opportunity to interface with patients. I think that's, that leadership is not only percolating throughout the CDRH, it is also having a direct impact in terms of the focus and engagement that people within the industry are having with patients. So those in the back, if you want to kind of grab a seat here, I'm going to go ahead and start on the next portion of the talk. I think I have, yes, very good. So this is MDIC Plenary and Q&A. Oops, now they've added a slide, so I need to be careful before I advance them. So this is the fun part of my job. I'm going to start today by actually recognizing a number of key contributors to the work we do at FDA. There's a lot of volunteers that get very involved in what we do, and we really appreciate everybody's contributions. It's across the ecosystem and community. We have, our work is really a labor of passion, if you will, and people get involved that have day jobs and do make tremendous commitments to what we do. And today what we're going to do is we're going to recognize a couple of those individuals that have been subject matter experts that got involved in MDIC because they just believed in our mission, the vision, and wanted to contribute, and it was above and beyond. So these are people that, as individuals, aren't members of a particular organization that's involved with MDIC. They just believe in what we do and want to be part of it. So the first person I would like to recognize is Dr. Susan Alpert. Dr. Alpert is a PhD and MD. She founds and leads a consulting practice in industry called SFA Regulatory LLC. She specializes in helping companies develop regulatory strategies for entry into the U.S. healthcare market. Prior to SFA Regulatory, Dr. Alpert served in senior leadership positions within industry, and previously she also worked at FDA, where she had a variety of positions in the center dealing with drugs, devices, radiological health, and food, including 6 years as the director of the Office of Device Evaluation. Dr. Alpert was there day one when I got involved in MDIC, and she was there not only to help the organization, but to help me personally. Susan has been a tremendous advocate for everything that we do, and she's been involved in our, you name the program, Susan's been there. You can get her to support and sign up for things, and then more importantly, she delivers. And this is a woman that's around the world 24/7. I never know exactly where I'm going to find her, but I do know that she will respond to my calls. And so her work within MDIC, we've developed a program of recognition, and she was submitted, and it was unanimously supported that she would be recognized as an MDIC fellow. Susan, come up and be congratulated. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful. Thank you. Do you want to say anything?
Yes, I do. You guys know I will say something. No, I want to thank MDIC for the recognition and just say I was there day one, actually day minus 2 or 3, and spoke to Jeff and Dale Wallstrom about the idea when it was first starting, and I think that it's a great tribute to Bill and to his staff as well for making it into a reality and bringing everybody to the table and continuing to grow and reach out and addressing some of the knotty issues that make it hard for companies and make it hard for being on the FDA side for working together. So I think this is great, and I just thank you for the recognition and for the opportunity to have fun. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. The second award goes to Associate Professor Dr. Greg Melnar from the University of Minnesota. Greg has over 20 years of medical device experience within the industry. He's including over 10 years at Medtronic's Director of Neuromodulation Research. I got involved with Greg a couple years ago when we were doing a neurostim project, and he came in at a time when we were really looking for and needed some leadership support within MDIC. We didn't have the expertise in-house, and he stepped up, he raised his hand and said, I can help. And so it was a natural fit to have him partner with us on the neurostimulation safety project. The team gained insight into prior safety work and also published an article to help leverage the FDA's rich database on public PMA safety evidence for future and faster submissions. This work is a great example of MDIC. I like to say what we do is we do. We just don't talk and convene. We actually deliver real tools and methods. And so this is an example. And again, I want to recognize Greg and have him come up as another MDIC fellow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
You want to say? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Bill and Don and the MDIC team. This is a real pleasure. Getting involved, it is a true treat, having been on the industry side and now back with the patients and really listening to the voice of the patient. I think my knack to demystify some of the scientific concerns about medical devices is hopefully going to be helpful, where there is kind of a perceived risk, but really when you break it down and do some translational studies, it's actually relatively safer than the traditional surgeries that medical devices provide, where they would be, say, for deep brain stimulation, providing a large lesion in the brain the size of a marble or two, you're losing a lot of neurons. And so worrying about whether electricity may kill a couple of neurons when it's stimulating, when you weigh those risks and you listen to the patient saying, hey, I'd rather have a reversible therapy than a lesion, I think we can help. So with MDTs and working with the FDA, I think we can really make a difference to get these therapies to the patients faster and meet their needs, especially as the population is aging. So go to all of us, and I'm proud to be a part of the team. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
I have one final recognition that we'd like to do, and this is a team recognition, and it's a recognition that actually is part of Jeff Shuren's formal recognition process, and this is for a director's citation recognition for MDIC's virtual patient mock submission team. And so today I want to invite the leadership that was involved in this. So we have Randy Schistel, who is a board champion for our modeling and simulation, if Randy could come up. We have Kyle Myers, who is involved in the project from also and a key contributor and leader in the project. And then from my team, Don Bordeaux, Vice President of Technology and Innovation. And Jeff Shuren is going to come up to actually speak to the team and introduce the award. Jeff, come on up.
Yeah, so we can't let MDIC be outdone by giving out awards, so we're giving ours too. And this is to the team for the collaborative development of a framework to augment clinical trials with virtual patients and communication activities to facilitate the widespread adoption of this methodology. So on behalf of the entire center and FDA, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you all. What I find particularly exciting about this particular award is that it is a truly multi-stakeholder award. So it wasn't just agency representation, it had representation across the ecosystem. And this was just a small group of the total team that got recognized on the project. So it's an example of what we do at MDIC. So I'm going to provide my keynote remarks today, and really pleased with how things have set up in the morning. First with Deputy Commissioner Abram, and then the panel with Mike, Mark, Scott, Jeff, and Kim. Really, I think, set the day in the discussion for how important the work we do is at MDIC. So I'm going to start by doing a little bit of an overview of the healthcare ecosystem, and this is not new to all of you, but I think it's an important context. And so let's go ahead and talk a little about the economic environment that we all work within today. As I was preparing for today's remarks, I started by reflecting on MDIC's role in the medtech innovation ecosystem and how we are positioned to help address the challenges that it is facing. The healthcare economic challenge in the U.S. is a well-worn topic, but a reality that we all face, and a huge driver of the forces that impact medtech. Starting with per capita spending on healthcare at over $9,400 per person, the U.S. by far spends more on healthcare than any other developed country. According to the World Health Organization, we spend greater than 2.5 times other developed countries, over $3 trillion. That's an amazing number. While this is a significant challenge for our nation, it is also a clear sign the ecosystem is ripe for innovation and disruption. Additionally, when we look at federal spending on two of the major healthcare programs, Medicare and Medicaid, the trend is the same. As a percentage of our federal budget, Medicare and Medicaid are more than a quarter of the federal budget, increasing from roughly 5% in 1971 to over 27% of our spending in 2015, and it's continuing to increase. These trends have a profound impact on innovation. Excuse me. Shareholders from across the ecosystem are looking for new ways to address value-based healthcare requirements, while also expanding innovation beyond product to delivering complete solutions. Patients, physicians, payers, and other stakeholders are becoming more sophisticated, requiring organizations to innovate in ways that address these needs. All of this is occurring with the increased scrutiny from payers on evidence of value. This article is on the economics of innovation. It highlights the challenges faced in getting a positive coverage determination, and we heard about that in the earlier panel today. From 2008 to 2012, CMS coverage determinations were 20 times less likely, that's less likely, to be positive than a decade earlier. And that's obviously having a significant impact on medtech. And the trends that we're seeing in terms of investment, et cetera, bear that out. So on the medtech side, let's start with looking at a white paper that was published jointly by AVIMed and Deloitte last week on early stage medtech innovation. Since the financial downturn of late 2008, early 2009, headwinds have continued as technology grows more sophisticated, reimbursement and regulatory requirements have increased, industry consolidation has accelerated, and venture capital investment has declined. Early stage innovators struggle for funding. It's not all doom and gloom, though. The good news, these environmental challenges also create opportunities. MedTech is in a unique position to address these challenges in ways that aren't available to other healthcare sectors. MedTech can be disruptive and deliver incredible value. Similar to other areas of technology, medical technology can be a catalyst for innovation. The products and services delivered can create new care pathways and system solutions that weren't practical even a few years ago. But it requires that we think about how to evolve the innovation process. MedTech has always been about collaboration, from the clinical community and industry in the beginning, working together to bring innovative products to market, to collaborating with healthcare providers and payers on delivery models, to today, where industry, government, patients, technology providers, and others are collaborating to innovate. MDIC plays a critical role here and is well positioned to facilitate this collaborative regulatory science work necessary to help improve innovation. And all of this requires interacting with patients in a new way throughout the total product life cycle. From research to diagnosis and treatment, patients are becoming involved as research partners as well as consumers. Patient involvement is guiding light for truly important innovation centered on value creation. And we heard again about that earlier today. Clearly, these trends have started already, as evidenced by data on this slide from a CDRH highlighting that greater than 500% increase in device studies with patient-reported outcomes. And in the FY15 cohort, 50% of PMAs contain patient-reported outcomes. This is all part, I mean, we heard the discussions earlier today. This is all part of clearly the trend that's happening where the patient is becoming centric to all that we do. And with that, this is the beginning of a significant culture shift we talked about today throughout the industry. Ultimately, a patient-centric, continually learning medical device ecosystem is the vision. As we move forward, the National Evaluation System will leverage real-world evidence to inform new approvals, achieve near real-time safety monitoring, and accelerate patient access to important new technologies. This culture shift, combined with the rapid advances in technology, has made the vision of a continually learning ecosystem a near-term reality. In particular, advances in digital health technology are unlocking the potential for real-world evidence generated in routine course of clinical care to achieve the paradigm shift to an active, responsive system throughout the total product life cycle and across the ecosystem. MDIC is proud to host the National Evaluation System for Health Technology Coordinating Center, and you'll hear from Rachel Florence, the Executive Director, and a number of key participants within our NEST community during the next session. These advances in digital health are creating a virtuous cycle of innovation as new healthcare investments are accelerating. From 2011 to 2016, digital health Series A venture investment has increased over fivefold to over $1 billion. This is an incredible trend, and this is speaking to the opportunity that is being created by the technologies that are available in the consumer world being transformed and repurposed in our digital health environment. And these digital health collaborations are expanding as more companies look for ways to deliver system solutions and address value-based healthcare needs. On this slide are a few selected examples of recent digital health collaborations, which again highlight the need for novel regulatory science approaches. And this is driving investment in disruptive and breakthrough solution innovation. As this survey highlights, companies are investing in innovation from customer experience to technology to product to business models. And the left, the orange and the green, are where there's more than 50% investment in either breakthrough or radical areas within these four areas. So again, this is an environment that says it's ripe for innovation, and people are starting to recognize that. These trends are creating opportunities within Medtech, and as a result for MDIC, as we bring stakeholders together to make investments in regulatory science that will help drive regulatory science investments that will help drive innovation. MDIC, our public-private partnership, is well positioned to address these unique challenges, and we look forward to collaborating with all of you going forward. It's been, I just finished my 4-year anniversary with the organization, and I would say to be here today versus where we were 4 years ago, it's been an incredible journey, and we've made tremendous progress. But it has not happened alone, or even with my team. It has happened because of the great contributions of work of many of you in this room, as well as people that are on the WebEx today, and countless of probably hundreds of other people that are involved throughout the ecosystem. So with that, I will now open it up for questions. So if anybody has any questions, we have some time. I'm happy to take some questions. We have a very quiet group today. Very quiet group today. Anything at all? No? We must be doing wonderful things and have no issues. So yeah, Susan, you have a question. So what's the next project? So first of all, that's a good question. And it's a timely question because last year at this time, the next project was really getting Nest off the ground. And when we think about this point last year, Don Bardot and I were basically both doing double duty on jobs. And so now we have that in place. I think we're feeling much better to kind of lift our heads up and look at what can come next. So I'll answer it in twofold. I'd say first on the broader spectrum, and you heard it from the panel up here today, we're trying to figure out how to effectively engage and collaborate on reimbursement. By far and away, if we could find a way to make that a reality, that would be a huge win for the ecosystem. So that's kind of broadly speaking an area that we're interested in trying to understand more fully. I'd say the other area more within the traditional regulatory science work that we're looking at is we've made some tremendous progress in our patient engagement. We've started to really work now. We've made good progress in modeling and simulation. Feedback from the community, and we actually had physician engagement come in and ask for our help last year. This was through the leadership of TCT to get involved in early feasibility studies. And Chip Hance is in the front row with you, but he's taken that leadership mantle from our board. But the goal of first in the world access in the US starts at the very beginning with early feasibility studies. And so we're doing a lot of work here, and I think you'll start hearing more about that in the coming months in terms of impact that we can see and have on really helping streamline and facilitate access to technologies by making it easier for the innovators to work within the ecosystem to get the clinical research done in the US. Thank you. There's a question.
I'm not quite sure if there's a question in here, but I noticed for the innovation at a Crossroads, the term value-based for healthcare providers. And to me, that's always translated into show me how your device is going to reduce our costs. And then the panel, I think particularly Scott mentioned looking at stuff more in terms of the value it has to patients. So to me, that all translates into return on investment. And the question is, you know, what kind of return are you talking about? And if it's return for patients, how is that going to be measured and who's going to measure it? And again, I don't know that those are questions. It would be helpful if people would kind of explore more what they mean by some of those terms to see who's talking about the same versus different things and where those definitions are coming from, I guess is what I want to say.
So it's a multifaceted and complex question, obviously. I think, and it speaks to both the complexity and challenges we have within the broader ecosystem, starting with the fact that their value is defined differently by different stakeholders. So the opportunity that we have within MDIC is to bring those stakeholders together to figure out where the intersection of value might lie between all of those, starting with the patient, being very patient-centric in that process. But I think it might have been Mark Leahy that mentioned that one of the challenges that we have today is if you happen to have a therapy that has a big upfront expense but a long-term benefit, how does that fit within the ecosystem today? Now, I will tell you that MDIC, we're not on the policy side, so we don't deal with the policy aspects of that. But if there's a science or a regulatory science or an innovation question that we can bring to that, that's where we come into the equation. But starting with identifying and having clarity from the different stakeholders in terms of how they define value, I think is extremely important. And it may sound strange, but it's another cultural shift where in our Case for Quality program, which is very clearly focused and has a lot about systems and processes and product quality, a number of our meetings, we had healthcare providers come, and they talked about what's important from their perspective. We had patients involved. and the whole concept of value analysis committees and where that's going from that part of the ecosystem. So, you know, I think what we can do at MDIC is be the catalyst for bringing those stakeholder groups together and allowing for those complex discussions to proceed and figure out where there's the opportunity for us to engage and where there might be a policy question that somebody else has to engage. So, good.
My name is John Birch. I'm an angel investor with the Mid-America Angel Capital Network in Kansas City. And I have a question, but first a quick comment on your statement about the opportunities being ripe for disruption and innovation. I hear pitches all the time from software entrepreneurs especially who say they're out to disrupt healthcare. And I say, my usual, at first I thought that was great, but then I finally kept asking them, are you really sure you want to disrupt healthcare? And the next time you go to the emergency room or whatever.
Yeah.
So I am always cautious when I hear that. But my question is this. It has to do with the movement toward real-world data and evidence. The proliferation of digital data today does seem to create an awful lot of opportunity, but it's also exposing some problems that were not dealt with by the HITECH Act and simply by the proliferation. Indeed, with wearables and so on, it's created more and more silos of data, and some of those are the entrepreneurs that I deal with. But my question is this, that there is an institutional problem here that has not yet been even addressed, which is the fragmentation of healthcare and the fact that the real-world data follows that fragmentation. That's just the nature of it. How big a problem is that as far as this industry's use of real-world data, and what can be done about it?
It's an excellent question, and what I am going to do is actually the next session on NEST is going to cover this in a comprehensive way. What I will tell you, though, is that we have our eyes wide open. We know that the data are siloed and they're in different formats, and the challenge of engaging with the data holders to get the collaboration and sharing is well understood to be a critical aspect in this process. So it's a core concept of NEST that we need to find a way to bring these disparate stakeholders together. The governing committee of NEST is made up of 16 representatives from across the ecosystem. That's a pretty significant span of engagement across the ecosystem. And so I think you'll hear in the next session a lot more about how this is going to evolve. And if you don't, ask your question again. Thank you. Michelle.
Bill, this also relates to the previous question as well, but in your comments, you mentioned how there's this growing emphasis on information technology and its impact on the medtech space. And we saw last week at the Medtech conference that there's this growing number of information technology companies that are interested in this space. Has MDIC seen that interest as well in their membership? Are you growing to enlarge the definition of medical device companies to include those companies? And if so, or if when it happens, are you seeing a change in the interest in the questions that the companies want you to answer and the issues that they see arising?
So the answer is yes. It's early days for us, but a prime example is our afternoon speaker is from IBM Watson Health. And IBM Watson Health joined MDIC this year. So I think that's the example of, if you will, the movement that's happening. We have another member, Metadata, that has come in. So, and I anticipate as we go forward that this is going to continue in a significant way because of what you saw, the Series A, we're about innovation. You see the Series A investments. If we're not aligning our work with where the money is going for innovation, then we won't be proactively meeting the needs that are going to be coming forward that ultimately will show up at the doorsteps of CDRH as submissions or clearance requests. Kim?
Thanks, Bill. Kim McCleary with Faster Cures. We heard on the previous panel Jeff Shuren provide a real, I think, strong leadership role in restructuring CDRH to align with the total product life cycle. And MDIC in the last year has kind of restructured by establishing an office in Washington, D.C. I wonder if you would just speak to how that shift in geography and the structure of the MDIC team has maybe enabled you to look differently at the partnership opportunities to see problems in seeking solutions that MDIC might address, and how it's changed maybe your approach to partnering across the ecosystem.
So good question. So the first part of that was basically very pragmatic and survival based. I was on the road every week, and so and it's because we had great engagement here in DC. And also with the fact that we were awarded the NEST Coordinating Center, I knew that there was going to be a tremendous amount of work upcoming to get that stood up and in place and get the leadership hired. So that was the beginning of the process. What has happened as our success has also expanded, and it's allowed us to start to move beyond what I'll call a project-centric structure, where we had program managers / directors who were on projects, to more strategic constructs. So Vice President of Clinical Trial Science, Vice President of Technology and Innovation, and potentially adding to that as we go forward. So that's how we envision evolving the organization as we are able to expand and grow based on member engagement and priorities that happen. We take a lot of our strategic alignment and vision from what's happening at CDRH and in the future potentially from CMS and other private payers. So our organization will mirror the work that we're doing in collaborating with those organizations in support of industry. Question.
Pablo Morales, Medical Officer at the Division of Cardiovascular Devices, FDA. I have a question. So we heard in the morning session that we got the real-world evidence guidance, that we're trying to collect additional information. When I look at the graph that is at the table, I'm wondering if electronic health record vendors should be part of MDIC, and also registry owners like the American College of Cardiology, NCDR, and other registries, because they seem to be in a sweet spot that they can collect the data and archive the data. But someone mentioned earlier today, they charge a lot of money for it. And I think if we're trying to challenge the current model, because it's not sustainable, I think it may be a good opportunity to extend them an invitation to be part of MDIC, so that as we disrupt the system to be more efficient, faster, and better, they are part of the change rather than we trying to reinvent the wheel with the collection mechanism and the electronic health vendors that we have to interface with.
So it's an excellent question, and we haven't had any direct engagement with the EMR vendors per se, but some of the other groups, the physician societies, et cetera, we've had engagement both within MDIC and also more recently within the NEST Coordinating Center, and we recognize that those are critical stakeholders on multiple fronts, beginning with the fact that the physicians are the channel for much of the delivery of everything we do. So that collaboration has to be there. But now, as they have evolved to being important data holders in this process, the societies that they're involved with are also critically important. So there's been, I'll say, engagement, but there isn't anything yet in terms of a specific formal relationship, although it's not precluded. We could have physician societies be part of MDIC. It's envisioned within our charter. Thank you.